There has been controversy all over Twitter and the community. Which is better, the original 6v6 model for Overwatch 1 or the new 5v5 model in Overwatch 2? We've had almost a year on this new system, so it's time to get down to the nitty-gritty and begin to understand the pros and cons of both systems. I want to preface that I personally believe that 6v6 was the way Overwatch was meant to be played all along. I personally enjoyed it more and competed at higher levels in Overwatch 1, but that is all subjective. Let's get objective here. Let's begin to discuss Overwatch 2. It is important to understand that this game had a few disadvantages on launch compared to the original shipment in 2016. The game was created amongst negative sentiment about the lack of content for the original game for years before the release. Very negative sentiment. That is why so many creators like Donkey and Moist Critical were pissed off and said that this was just the same game with one less player, even though in reality it plays a lot different at a competitive level. People just didn't give the game the time of day needed to see that, which makes sense considering the fact that this game is heavily marketed towards a very casual community of players. Aside from this, the reality is that the developers stated Overwatch 2 was created because the game felt too cluttered and would give players more opportunities to individually carry games. Depending on the composition, the cluttered screen is a problem in both games. The more you play, the more it makes sense, but taking away one player did not eliminate how difficult it is to simply watch the game play out. Also, judging by the vision for the game being clearly casual, I don't think it was actually a core reason to go from 6v6 to 5v5. In terms of an easier time carrying games, this is honestly pretty true, just in the most boring ways in my opinion. Sure, every role can carry, but that is by counterpicking the opposing tank as one yourself, clicking everyone's head as Hanzo and Widowmaker, or picking the most blatantly overpowered supports that do way too much. It is crazy to me how Kiriko casually has crazy mobility and immortality on a 14-second cooldown, a versatile ultimate, 2-shot potential, and everyone is complaining about Alari that just got added to ranked recently and got gutted. Herein lies the problem of 5v5. You have to distribute the value of that tank to both the rest of the tanks in the game and all of the supports to make those roles feel somewhat rewarding to play at a casual level. Before Kiriko and the other characters, players were actually complaining about support feeling too difficult to play. Remember that? This, in reality, was just because there was finally a steep learning curve around the role, but now crazy utility is used to compensate. Because of this, now you have characters that don't really specialize in one composition, but do a bunch of different things in order to maintain dominance. That is why you see tanks like Winston and Ramatra being so dominant in the meta, and supports like Kiriko simply existing as she has for the past year and a half. You almost have to have this utility to be useful in a game where the off-tank's job doesn't exist anymore. This is a really big problem when the game was founded upon strategy first, then mechanical skill, not vice versa, because the latter is what the game is now, mechanical skill before strategy. In theory, this makes sense from the casual perspective as it takes less time to pick up the game if you are migrating from another FPS, but it's abandoning what made Overwatch, creating what is, in my opinion, a jumbled mess. Not to mention various systems being taken out of the game just to be later implemented. The original Overwatch wasn't without its problems though. I'm not going to say that the year and a half of GOATs was excusable. I also am not saying that I loved playing Double Shield either. I'm an Ana player for crying out loud. There were always options as a team, however, to theory craft around the map to try different combinations of characters to overcome the enemy, at least in ranked. If you are an OG, I am sure you remember the East Coast trolls with Samido and Silvok beating the NYXL in the GOATs meta playing Torb, Junk, and Mei. It was possible, and I really enjoyed that about the original game. Not to mention that the triple DPS ball comp was emerging to counter GOATs slightly before the inception of Rollock, but I digress. The off-tank is what gave Overwatch identity within the gaming space that gave players arguably more carry potential the better they got at the game, as well as when they improved as a teammate. I feel like the problem with Overwatch 1 was not that there was a lack of carry potential or an abundance of clutter on the screen, it was simply that the development team was focused on making Overwatch 2 because of a pushback from upper management that the game was almost forgotten in the dust. The argument really comes down to what you like more. FPS elements that require intensive mechanical skill to carry games with crazy utility, or MOBA elements that require intensive thought to carry games with moderately powerful utility. My opinion is that if you wanted an FPS, play CSGO, play Siege, play Valorant, don't play Overwatch. Overwatch was Overwatch because it was different. It was one of the pioneers of the hero shooter genre, even more so than TF2, yeah. I said it. I am genuinely curious how the alternate dimension that treated Overwatch 1 with care is doing though. Is the game doing better than what Overwatch 2 is doing right now? Honestly, probably not. Even if they did perfect that FPS MOBA mix. Overwatch 2 does cater towards a larger audience, creating more opportunities for revenue, but it is arguably a much worse experience in my opinion, even though I still do slightly enjoy it. Obviously, this is an opinionated piece, so if you disagree, flame me in the comments. No one will ever agree on these topics. What I can say is that this is what we have now, so don't let the thought of the original game ruin your perception of the new game. Overwatch 2 is still a game worthy of enjoyment, especially with Season 6 coming in. With that, thank you all so much for watching, but until next time, I've got to peace out and Paz out. I'll see you in the next one.